Hello, everybody. My name is Ana Rezende, and in this podcast, I will share my transformational journey to become a health coach. In each episode, I will address a different subject that impacts our health, whether physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Because I've learned that being healthy means being in balance. If you would like to make amazing discoveries, improve your health, get inspired, and yet find sustainable ways to live and help the planet, tune in. You are in the right place. I'm your host, Ana Rezende, and Good is What Makes You Feel Well is Mama Terra's podcast.
Toma banho de cachoeira, abraça uma pessoa amiga, corre na chuva, escala a montanha, contempla a vista, transcende, levita.
What if the greatest love story of your life was the one you had with yourself? In this episode, I am joined by Abby Rosmarin, a writer, former teacher, and yoga teacher whose work has been featured in many different publications. Over the past 9 years, she has been writing her way through the messiness of being human, from heartbreak and trauma recovery to mental health, self-worth, and the often overlooked power of solitude. Abby is the author of several independently published books, including The Ballerina Guide to Boxing and Venom. Her newest book, The Year of Dating Myself, How My Solo Tour Healed More Than Just My Heartbreak, which came out this past summer. It's part memoir, part love letter to the self, and part wake-up call for anyone who's ever lost themselves in love. In today's conversation, we talk about what it means to truly come home to yourself after years of chasing validation, romance, and the promise of the perfect life. Abby opens up about the patterns that she had to break, the uncomfortable truths she had to face, and how choosing to date herself changed everything. This episode is for anyone who's ever asked, "How did I get here?" and is ready to take the power back. Please welcome Abby Rosmarin. Hi, Abby.
Hi, how are you doing?
Welcome to Good is What Makes You Feel Well.
Thank you so much.
So for us to start our conversation, I would like to ask you what, in this moment of your life, makes you feel well?
I think for me is music and specifically making music. Over the last about like 6 or so months, I've been learning to play guitar and then after that piano. And there's something really beautiful and very grounding about being the source of the music. And especially after a hard day of work or what have you, being able to find that inner wellness, if you will, by just getting lost in the song. That's definitely it for me.
Wow, that is so awesome. That is right now. So
Hmm.
how this concept of feeling well has evolved throughout your life? We always change so much. So how it was feeling well for you years ago?
Oh man, I would say probably the biggest shift when I think about like present day versus even a couple of years ago, what I thought made me feel well was productivity. Oh man, I got my to-do list completely done. I did this thing or that thing. I'm a very avid hiker, so it's like, oh, I've just, tackled this hike and I was able to do it at this speed at this time. And especially as I've been getting a little older, a little wiser, just kind of learning the things that life has been teaching me, I kind of look back on that and go, that was a definition, if you will, of wellness. But I don't know how much of that wellness was actually there because what was on that other side of achievement was just, well, it's time to do more achievement. And if anything, that stands in stark contrast to today, where, sometimes wellness is being willing to say, achievement, we're going to hit pause on that and just take care of ourselves right now.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So tell me how you take care of yourself today besides music, because I know now that makes you feel well.
I think the big thing is, well, first checking in with myself because I still to this day can be a little overambitious for my own good, and I can burn the candle at both ends and just, work is basically starting as soon as I get up and it's not ending until I'm basically in bed. But being able to check in, especially with my energy levels, and to like give myself permission to rest when I can, which is not something I could do, even like maybe 7 or 8 months ago. And I think that is a really big thing, that the permission to do nothing and to, especially do nothing outside, not necessarily going on a crazy hike, but, giving myself a chance to maybe lay in some grass and breathe and just be like, nope, it's me and the wind right now.
Wow, that is so great. Is that recent discovery?
Yeah, I think it's been a pretty recent discovery where, I, watched all of these big shifts happen in my life, and it gave me a chance to really reevaluate some things and really recognize what was actually important in my life. And on top of that, my work shifted, and in many ways it was a very positive shift, but it also added so much more onto my plate than before. And so with a combination of those two things, recognizing that if I want to stay in the field that I'm in now and I want to not burn out like I have in previous fields, I need to continue to shake off that old value system and allow myself to just be.
That is awesome. Awesome. So tell me about your work history. You said some big shifts happened recently. How was that for you?
You know, I've noticed that my life will tend to take these like really big twists and turns where, when I was in college, especially undergrad, and I was getting my English degree, which of course, what's one of the fields that you want to go into if you're an English major, you want to work in publishing. And I really did love the firm that I was working at throughout, especially the middle years of my college career and towards the end. But towards that end, I was like, I can't do this. This is too stressful. It's too fast paced. And ended up switching entirely into education. And I was a early education teacher for about a good 4 or so years. And unfortunately, I knew by the end of year one that this was not going to be sustainable. And
Mm.
unfortunately, I was still in that headspace of, go, 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 achieve, like mama didn't raise no quitter kind of deal. And unfortunately, that led to absolute burnouts. And, I found refuge in taking yoga classes, and taking yoga classes turned into going to a teacher training and basically falling into the world of yoga instruction and fitness instruction. And I hit the ground running there again, achieve, 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 build up the client list, build up your class schedule. And that was all great right up until the pandemic. And as you can imagine, that disappeared pretty quickly. But these days, though, I work in the mental health and behavioral health world, I've got a foot in kind of multiple areas, from inpatient and outpatient programs to private practice, and I truly, truly love it. I look back on, with the exception of how the pandemic kind of forced my hand on that part of my career, but I look on the other ones where I ran myself into the ground, and I was like, I don't want to do that again. And getting that chance to really, do that kind of like fearless self-inquiry that I know AA talks a lot about, where just kind of looking at those blind spots and looking where my demons might have been driving the boat, as opposed to, my highest self, if you will, and going, all right, it's time to reevaluate. It is time to, shift in a more positive direction.
Oh, and where does your author career fits in all those shifts?
It is very interesting where I did watch my writing levels go down. I used to be someone who always had a project in the works and always was like, oh, what I'm submitting to this magazine and that magazine, and I've got this book being queried, and I'm going to self-publish that book. And these days, writing is for me, and I'm realizing how important that's been. I used to be the kind of person who would write in her journal as if somebody was going to find it later on and publish it. I never really wrote for me. And, giving myself that chance to just kind of take that step back and go, no, like when I journal, I'm going to journal for me. And it's not about like, well, but about how poetic is this? If someone reads this back, how inspired are they going to be? What if I just assume that these are for my eyes only, and it's going to be a freak accident that someone else reads this, not a planned, future happenstance?
Uh-huh. I love that idea. I'm a big journaling person too. I journal every day. And sometimes, yes, I feel like I'm writing for somebody else to find it. But I just stopped even correcting my spelling mistakes because I said, nobody's gonna read this. This is just for me. Don't need to correct it. Yeah, it is funny how those mental constructs play some tricks on us. Yeah, it's interesting. I know you've published more than one book, right? Do you want to
That's
talk
correct.
about that?
Sure. So I first got into like, well, I've been writing my entire life, and after actually I burnt out from being a teacher, I was starting to do a little freelance writing for websites. I first got into that foray of like book publishing through the website I was writing for at the time, Thought Catalog. They had a book publishing branch, and I threw a couple ideas their way and was like, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And eventually, throughout that timeline, two of them stuck and were released through that website. And I also always had these other manuscripts just kind of like hanging out in the wings. And try as I might to try to like find an agent and a publisher, they really weren't going anywhere. And I decided, actually, one of those big shifts that had happened in my life happened in 2015, where my father's health had declined and eventually he would pass away later on in the year. And to kind of keep my head on straight, I was like, okay, I'm going to take one of these manuscripts and I am going to just polish it as best as I can, and I'm just going to publish it myself. And even though it was an extremely daunting process, and I look back on it, and I can already see all the the mistakes I made along the way in areas where like, some outside editing would probably have been of benefit. There was still something really wonderful about getting over that hump, if you will. And I ended up just kind of releasing a couple of fiction books on my own and a collection of poetry and a collection of short stories. And it felt really good to just get that work out there.
Mm-hmm.
The book that's coming up is actually the first time a more like the mainstream publishing endeavor. Like this is my first time really doing that, which is really cool. And it has also been nice to be like, oh, I don't have to do all the things, because when you're self-publishing, you get to do all the things.
Yeah. So I love the title of your last book, The Year of Dating Myself.
Mhm.
How my solo tour healed more than just my heartbreak. You were already working in the mental health space when you started writing it, right?
Yes.
So that was kind of part of your actually healing from
It
the
was.
the relationships.
It was, and honestly, I found that, that reinvestment meant reinvestment across the board, which meant reinvestment in work, because I'll be the first to admit that work would be the first thing on a back burner when I was in a relationship. Any of, hobbies, any element of me would fall by the wayside because I was dating somebody. And to be able to navigate the mental health world, and especially, one of the big things is you try not to like unload what's happening in your life to the patients, because they're there to heal. They're not there to be your emotional support. But there would be something very reassuring in knowing that, like, man, we're all kind of going through this together, and we all got our highs and lows, and we're all going to eventually see to the other side of this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I love the idea that you broke down the chapters into months, like showing how the process was actually happening along the year. And so tell me that process, how it was, the evolution of it, if you will. Yeah.
In a lot of ways, the structure of the book mimicked the structure of my notes in my notes app when I was starting to try to map out the year of dating myself. Because I knew that I needed to have that structure and I needed to create something that would see me through to the end. Because one of the other not so great traits that I know about myself is I can go really, really hard about something and then it peters out and just collapses, and I didn't want that to happen here. So
Mm.
I had something, and my goal was to every month there's got to be some kind of event that I'm going to go to. I'm going to try to go to like a class that I've never tried before, and I tried to really give myself that goal for each month, so it wasn't just a case of like January, February, March, I'm doing all the things. April, yeah, I guess I'll do something, and by June I'm done. But I found that it was, first off, so incredibly healing to really make sure I saw all the way to the end, which included to keep doing it even when the novelty faded. Because the true to form, it was around June, July that I was like, am I running out of steam? Is the new shiny about this gone? But there was something about even with the new shiny being gone and still doing this for myself is like I'm worth more, if you will, than just being the new shiny. I'm worth being invested in even when the novelty wears off, which was a situation that I would keep getting myself into in the dating world where I would get into these like romantic situations where it felt like once the new shiny of my existence, if you will, was gone, they kind of lost interest too, kind of deal. But here I was kind of proving that it's more than just about novelty. And then on top of that, just learning that I can do stuff on my own. That was so scary, to be honest. I never even so much as gone to a movie theater by myself, let alone a concert or a restaurant or anything like that. I always had someone in tow, and that someone was usually a romantic partner. But to realize that I could do these things and I could do them by myself was so incredibly empowering. And learning to just, love your own company, like, and not having to rely on somebody else's experience of whatever it is that we're at to enjoy it. I didn't realize how much I would filter my experience through, are they having a good time? Are they finding it amusing that I'm having a good time, or do they think I'm being obnoxious? Like everything was always filtered through the partner. But now it was like, no, there's nothing to filter through. This is just about me and my experience.
Yeah. Yeah. How freeing that is. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Yeah. And how was the discovery process? Because for women listening, most of us are in this pattern of looking for somebody, looking for that Prince Charming, right? So we were all one day princesses watching Cinderella and all the Disney movies, and we grew up with that probably from our grandmas and our mothers, and I don't know, maybe fathers. So for those women listening, and I think that is pretty much the audience that you want for your book, right? For
Mhm.
them to understand how important it is for our relationships in life, for us to love ourselves first and to take care of ourselves first. So, what do you think should be a good message for those women?
I'd say the biggest thing is first there is, giving some love and compassion to ourselves, even in that understanding that we might have been orbiting around other people, orbiting around our romantic relationship or orbiting around family. That's how, on top of all of these Disney movies and the Disney prince and the fairy tale, we were raised and conditioned to be selfless, to orbit around relationships, to prioritize, like, become a mom and now you orbit around your kids kind of deal. So it's okay that that's parts there. We don't want to shame it away. Like it has a valid origin. We came about it honestly, if you will. But if anything, that shift to learning to orbit ourselves is not selfish. I mean, we always hear the like, we got to put our oxygen mask on first before we put it on to somebody else. Cognitively, logically, we understood that. But I know for me that in the event of such an emergency, I'd probably be like, no, I'll be fine. Oxygen mask. But there is something to be said that you need to be able to breathe too in order to help others breathe. And if anything, and mind you, I know very little about the world of molecular biology and chemistry, so this is, a layman's version of this metaphor, if you will. If we are not orbiting ourselves, but instead we're orbiting the relationships around us, which can be chaotic and unstable and unpredictable, and there's no control over who is going to be in our lives versus leaving. If somebody wants to leave our orbit, if you will, they will. It centers us. It literally centers us, but it's not self-centered to create that centering. Like here's three definitions of center all in one sentence, where to center ourselves is centering, but it's not being self-centered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's so, so key. So, so important. Yeah. So, is there any relation of your writing process and wanting to publish this book with your dad's passing? Was it a turning point in your life?
I think in some ways, well, my dad's passing was a huge turning point in a lot of ways, just given the way that I was raised and what have you. And, there's a reason why I know the tenets of AA and that Al-Anon has a very similar system, which Al-Anon being the support group for loved ones of alcoholics. My dad, his demons were quite large demons, and while Parkinson's was eventually what cut his life short, that addiction didn't help one bit. I do believe that it kind of ran the progression of the disease. And it gave me this moment of like, okay, I have to kind of stare down the barrel of this gun, if you will, and really take stock in what my childhood was and the kind of father I had and the kind of father I wish I had had. And how did this affect me? How did this shape me to be the person that I am? How did this shape me to seek out the kind of relationships that I sought out? And then putting it into the writing world, there is something to be said about like tipping that scale to self-publish and watching that ball roll. And, I was not expecting it one bit, but as I was doing this year of dating myself, and I was doing my best to write about it in real time, ironically enough, that first draft was this big, clunky, almost like a journal. And then I had to make it into something that could be like, oh, people can actually read this. But as I was writing about it, I realized that I would, kind of come back to my experiences with my dad and realizing that somewhere along the line, like I had forgiven him. That was, learning that for me, forgiveness is a byproduct, not an active choice, was also very freeing as a, tangential side note. But it was just very interesting in the writing process to see I was stumbling into insight about my dad, even though I was trying to write about dating.
Yeah. It always comes back to them, mom and
Mm.
dad.
It does at the end of the day. That's okay. Those are your first bonds that, those are the people that you looked to for nurturance on every level because, for those first 18 years until you're a legal adult, but like, into young adulthood, and especially when we're a lot younger and say not old enough to drive a car and get ourselves anywhere, we are so dependent on these people to provide for us. And there are so many lessons that we will end up learning as we're growing up and our brain is forming and we're forming around their responses to our needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So now do you say you are providing to yourself what was missing from that era?
I would definitely say so. There's a segment in my book where I even talk about like realizing that the year of dating myself was also kind of the year of parenting myself and reparenting myself. And I'm a big believer in that looking into those childhood wounds and finding that like wounded little girl part, if you will, and essentially saying to that part, I'll be the adult for you the way that you didn't really necessarily have adults when you were an actual person growing up in this world.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a big, big realization for me too when I
Mhm.
started diving deep into this health and wellness world.
Mhm.
I have never done any inner child work up to that point, and that was really, really key.
I feel that.
Yeah.
I did years and years and years of the more cognitive based therapies and this is not me knocking things like cognitive behavioral therapy, but I found that I would get into this place where logically I had everything on lock. And yet here I was still repeating these patterns and still feeling this way and still getting into these really bad spirals. And it took things like doing that inner child work and really taking that time to see that little girl me as somebody who deserved love, which that in itself, as a side note, creates a bit of mourning because once you realize, oh, wait, that little girl deserved love, then you have to mourn the fact that she didn't get what she deserved. But it's also very freeing and very beautiful and empowering. And to me, that was one of the missing keys as I was getting myself into a better headspace and a healthier place in life.
Hmm. Yeah. So besides the book, you do work with one-on-one coaching and all that in the mental health space?
Yeah, not coaching per se, but I run like skills groups. I will work a little bit with one-on-one with patients as well. And to me, my big thing, because of that background in yoga, and that was also another one of those missing pieces is learning that so much of what my brain needed to learn had to be learned through the body. I couldn't logic it down because something was getting lost in translation, but utilizing the skills that we can learn through the body and through the breath to help out that nervous system and help out that emotion brain, especially when logic brain is trying to hammer some points home and it's all getting lost in translation.
Yeah, I love that. So you still do yoga then?
I do, not as much as I would like. I must admit, when the pandemic hit, not only did I watch that career disappear, but a lot of the studios that I would work for, they didn't make it to the other side of the pandemic. Like many businesses, unfortunately, they went under. And I just never fully got into the habit of returning to like a regular class. And I've always done better with that communal aspect. Like I can put a YouTube video on with some level of success, but my heart is in being with other people and doing my practice in community. And I got to admit that I keep meaning to get back into that swing of things, but there's always something else to do on the to-do list.
I know it's hard. How do you keep yourself physically active?
For me, the big one is circus arts. Actually, in the background right now, that green and purple
Oh,
stripes, those are aerial silks. I'm very lucky in that I was
that is
able to.
so cool.
I got into aerial silks more or less by happenstance in, I believe it was 2016 or 2017, and fell in love with it. And I think one of the big reasons I fell in love with it is because the buy-in for it is very high. The level of strength you need to do even the most basic moves is extremely high. And that was scratching the achievement itch in my brain. But even as, you find your flow, I've always loved aerial. It is very empowering and very, there's an artistic expression part to it as well. While I have yet to get into the habit or of my yoga classes, I have a weekly circus arts class that I'm very good at taking, and it is part inversions like handstands and part aerial silks. And ideally, I've been trying to get a little bit more deliberate exercise in, especially since my work hours have kind of ballooned out, you know. And usually it ends up being like I can take a 5-minute walk before getting back to work. So let's take a 5-minute walk around this campus and get back to work.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, that's what we need. We need to just use the time we have. We all need to do what we can, right? So there is the area with yoga with the silks too, right?
There is. And there is a considerable amount of overlap between aerial yoga and especially the sling version of aerial silks, basically using the same apparatus too, that like hammock style silk. There's definitely some major differences because that circus arts, again, it's a little more of that outward focus because the idea is like you're eventually putting on a performance, even if you're not necessarily taking the classes to, perform in Cirque du Soleil someday. That's kind of the idea. Whereas, ideally yoga and even aerial yoga is more of that internal focus. But I've found that if you don't want to get injured, you still need that internal focus while you're doing the circus arts because the likelihood of injury is very high. So that ability to be able to attune to what's happening to you internally is still just as important as if it were a yoga class.
Yeah. So now you are all over the arts then. You are into music, into
Mhm.
writing, and into circus. That is so fun.
I think up next, I'm missing what painting, sculpting. I guess I'll have to put those things up next on the list.
But art is such a good way to take care of ourselves too.
Mhm.
That
100%.
creative expression is so, so important. And once we just give space for it to express through us, right? It
Mhm.
just starts pouring. It's amazing.
It really is. And, I have learned, and, kind of tying in things like, therapy and that inner child work, I've learned that sometimes what's needed more than anything else is for that feeling, that thought, that memory to be expressed. And
Mhm.
expressed in whatever way it's going to feel right to be expressed. And once it's finally had that chance to get its moment in the spotlight, if you will, it turns down its volume a little bit. And it's a huge reason why I'll be that person. There's that meme, and it's probably who knows how many years old at this point, where it's like when you're sad, so you put on the sad song, so your sads get sadder. It's like but I'm expressing myself through the sad music because those sad emotions need a chance to have their moment in the spotlight and feel valid, and then they're going to eventually turn their volume down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. And just feeling those emotions fully.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's so important. So now tell me, after writing your book, how the concept of relationship changed for you.
It really, in a lot of ways, expanded out for me. I mean, I've always been a big fan of recognizing that relationships come in all shapes and sizes, and platonic ones ideally are no less important than romantic. Now, was I doing that in practice? Not so much, because again, once I had that romantic relationship, usually everything else would collapse in. But learning that, I mean, we are communal creatures. No man is an island. I know the Western world can be very individualistic, but we're communal. We need relationships. It's okay to have interdependence. Shifting into codependence, that's when it gets a little iffy. But that there's nourishment in the relationships around me, with my coworkers, with my friends, with my family, whether that is a biological family or a chosen family. And knowing that there's all this nourishment happening, and honestly, nourishment through the relationship with myself, that, and don't get me wrong, even while dating myself, that ache, that desire for the fairy tale happily ever after it's always there. You can't really like hush hush it away. But honestly, just like any other emotion, the more we try to, shame it and scooch it to the side, the louder it's going to get. So validating that and being like, you know what? Yeah, there's always going to be that little place in my heart that wants the fairy tale and the prince and the happily ever after. But understanding that there's all these other ways in real life to find nourishment, and maybe a romantic relationship can enter that orbit as well. Maybe not, but it's more about, is this the right person at the right time with the right, compatible personality versus, oh my God, I need to find someone.
Mhm. Yeah, the energy of needing is different from the energy of I'm open for whatever comes, right? And just trusting that timing, that whatever happens is going to be the perfect timing. That is really, really great.
There's a lot of areas that I ended up kind of, it was almost like once I was no longer always hyper focused on a guy, whether it was the hyper focus of trying to find a guy, the hyper focus of the relationship itself, or the hyper focus of, oh my God, it all went wrong and now I'm heartbroken. As soon as that was taken out, I realized that, like the energy almost naturally reorganized itself. And one of those areas actually was kind of confronting the fear about early onset Alzheimer's, because my mom, unfortunately, she has early onset Alzheimer's. She's been, well, the formal diagnosis happened in her 50s, but when we looked back on my life and especially growing up with her, it was probably closer to 40 that she started showing the symptoms. It's just, it wasn't until later that things had progressed enough that they're doing the brain scans. And I can't remember exactly which kind of brain scans that they would do, but, and seeing the decaying gray matter and realizing, oh, this is what we have on our hands. And I had this inspiration, went down this like research rabbit hole. Genetic testing for the more garden variety, if you will, Alzheimer's is kind of a fool's errand. Alzheimer's in old age, it can come from all sorts of places. Those dementia-related symptoms can come from all avenues. There are some, protein markers that might say like, that might increase your chance, but like it's really, if anything, they recommend against trying to do genetic testing for Alzheimer's because you might be just stressing yourself out for no reason. But on the other hand, early onset is a little more cut and dry. There are three proteins, specifically three markers that I believe, is it Huntington's? I believe is kind of a similar deal where if that shows up in the genetic testing, it's a guarantee that that's what you have. And I decided, you know what? I want to know now when I'm in my mid 30s, because this is around the time when symptoms are about to start showing. And while we don't have a cure, we do have ways to treat things and slow things down. And they always say the best time to start is before the symptoms. So if I have it, I want to know now. And there was some serious ups and downs to getting to that genetic testing. I didn't get genetic tested until July of that year. But to learn eventually that I am clear, that I do not have any of those markers, that was this moment of just like, oh, whoa. And in some ways, especially once the dust settled on that news for me, knowing almost like, having that piece of paper that says, well, I hope in some ways you logically always know that you're not going to be your mom, you're not going to be your parents, like, especially if you've been doing that work to heal and especially heal from that intergenerational trauma, you're not going to repeat the same mistakes that they are repeating, at least not, identical mistakes. But to have that piece of paper that was like on a genetic level, you are not going to turn into your mom. I did not realize how much I needed that until I had it.
Yeah. Have you read or heard anything about epigenetics?
I have, yes.
Mm,
And admittedly, a lot of it feels a bit outside of my pay grade, but doing my best to read up on it and learning about these like epigenetic responses and and how important environment is when it
mm,
comes to that intergenerational trauma. But it's just so incredibly fascinating. Like
yeah.
nature has its own both sleeper agent cells, if you will, to do what it thinks is helping us out. And that's why I always say our nervous system is just doing what it's trying to do to help us out. But also here are these almost salvation avenues that are just baked into the structure.
Yeah. I'm super glad that you don't have those markers in your genetic test. Of course, that is amazing. Even though if you had them, you can just change their expression. So you might have the gene, but you can block the gene expression and then not
Mm.
suffer the symptoms and not even develop the disease. So yeah, that is really a big hope for people that are afraid of having the genetic component. Anyways, I'm so glad that you don't have it. Is there anything else about your work that you would like to mention?
Yeah, there was one element that, it took a little while for me to really, make into a proper shape, if you will, and make sense of it. But when I was trying to heal from that last relationship, I was kind of orbiting around the source of that pain and orbiting around like, I can't believe that he had cheated on me, and I can't believe that he was so volatile with me, and I can't believe he lied to me, and like, trying to get to the truth of the matter. And somehow at the other end, when I'm going to finally get all that truth, oh my goodness, I'm gonna be able to let go of this relationship, and I'm gonna heal, and it's not gonna hurt me anymore. And it took a little while, and honestly, it took a little while, both in the year and just, in the years following, to just take that moment and go, I was doing that in lieu of processing and truly feeling that pain. It was, in some ways, it was that achievement side of things of, but if I do this thing, if I get to the bottom of all of these things, if I find out every woman he cheated on me with, I get to the truth of every single lie, somehow that's going to make me feel better. And it didn't. What I needed was to just take that time to validate my own hurt and not try to like prove something. But, again, we learn these lessons when we learn these lessons, and eventually was like it definitely helped shift me for the positive to realize that, hey, sometimes I'm doing the achievement thing in lieu of processing the pain, and it's okay not to get to the bottom of everything, and not orbit around the cause of the pain, but orbit around how you're going to heal from the pain.
Yeah, yeah. This is the most important thing. Yeah, I always say that, well, blaming somebody is not going to solve the problem. Blame never helps us solve anything. So it doesn't matter. We have to find a solution. If that is a pain that we have to feel, then we have to feel it, and that's it. Hopefully, it's going to go away if we feel. So there is this research from a neuroscientist that says if we leave the feeling and feel it fully, it's going to last only 90 seconds. But if we resist it, it's going to continue happening for days, months, or even years, right? So if we don't resist it, it's going to fade away eventually.
Exactly. It's that whole what resists persists.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge area that I had to really kind of sit with even just my dating life in general, where there were certain pains that, of heartbreak that I was trying to, run from by, oh, but here's a new love. And now it doesn't matter that that person broke my heart because I have this new person, but they were always there. And to give it that time to just feel it and watch it like, wow, something that's been persisting for years now and steadily cranking up the volume is already starting to dissipate because I just gave it that chance to be felt.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. All right. So, where can people find your book?
So my book is basically wherever online books are sold. I mean, Amazon is always the kind of the go-to, but we have our Barnes and Noble. We have, oh my goodness, and of course I'm blanking on all the other places, but it is also, if you go on the Simon and Schuster website, say that 3 times fast, the book is there, and I believe like multiple links to wherever we so desire to buy the book. Yeah, that is the easiest number one way to go and get the book. And yeah, I hope people enjoy it.
And I love the cover. It was
Oh,
so pretty, so thoughtful. I love it.
thank
I
you.
love
Me
it.
too. I remember when the graphic designer was showing some different ideas and had that one, and it was just this moment of, yeah, this is it. This is them.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I love it too.
Yeah, really pretty. Well, I hope this conversation will help lots of people and make them interested in your book.
Thank
And,
you.
as authors, what we want is for people, one, to buy, and two, to read.
It's true. We can't absorb the book by osmosis.
No,
I mean,
please, if you buy, read it.
I know I'm one to talk. My to read pile is pretty crazy, but yeah, we
Yeah,
the only way
mine
we can
too.
absorb it is to, yeah,
Yeah,
but
mine is
that's
too.
okay. Just
But
it
it's
shows how,
okay. It's
yeah,
going to
we
be
don't shame
sitting
it.
there at the right time. The person is going to pick up that book and read. So buy it and leave it
Mhm.
there. The right time will come.
There we go. The timing is always right at the end of the day.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Do you have any social medias?
So yeah, well, I've got my website, which is just abbyrosmarin-author.com. I am also on Instagram, Abby Rosmarin, and those are the two main areas you can find me.
Okay, that is perfect. We'll have all that in the show notes so people can find you easily, and we'll put a link to Amazon for your book too, just to make it easier for people to find.
Kindle, the ebook, if you will, the paperback.
Perfect. Did you record yourself reading it?
I did not. And in a lot of ways kind of grateful because I tend to stumble over my words. And I remember when we were auditioning the voice actors, much like when it came to my cover, there was this one voice actor we listened to, my editor and I, and we both were just like, this woman, she's the one, and she's
Oh,
phenomenal. And I truly can't wait to hear the entire book.
that is awesome. Awesome. Congratulations. I'm gonna go buy my copy.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, all the best for you and your book.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much for listening. It means a lot to me that you chose to be here. To help Mama Terra's mission of making the world a disease-free place for generations to come, you can follow the show, write a review, or talk to your friends about it. You can also subscribe to my newsletter. Every week, I craft good health and wellness tips, recipes, and book recommendations with love and care, just for you. My intention is to give you information and resources to help you make good choices and feel well. Find the link to subscribe in the show notes. Follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you again for being here. We have lots of new episodes coming up, so stay tuned. And remember, good is what makes you feel well.
Transcende levita. pessoa amiga, corre na chuva, escala